Well, hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Crusty Old Crow, and I'm back again to do another video on this rainy, windy, cold, snowy Monday morning here in Ottawa. It's really a crap day. It's a crap day to go outside. It's kind of a crap day to sit in my garage and do a video, so you might hear the heater going in the background. Eventually, I might have to move this into my basement, but for now, we're back out in the old lair, and we're going to do another tactical perspective video, but this time it's not going to be a review. We're going to do my top 10 G.I. Joe classified figures and where I rate them. Why am I doing this? Because like I said in my Crocmaster review, which was my 49th video, I want to try and stay a little relevant and stay on top of this. I like talking about this particular toy line. I grew up with G.I. Joe. I had the privilege of being the right age at the right time when they came out, re-released in the 80s. You know, they had come from that 6-inch figure line that our parents grew up, like my generation's parents grew up with. And then when I was about 8 or 9, they come out in that 3 3/4 inch. And wow, I mean, it was the perfect toy for our generation. And yeah, it was a propaganda march to reignite the love of the U.S. military after Vietnam and the Cold War era. But it was a very successful toy brand that launched cartoons and comics that were meant to launch this toy brand, and it worked beautifully. And I don't think anybody has a overly unhappy thought about G.I. Joe, really. Not anybody I care to have a long discussion with, although I would be interested in just finding out what is it about G.I. Joe that put you off. But for us, we loved it, right? So here we are now in the 2000s. Much older, I'm 50, and they brought this line back, and it's beautiful. And I've been collecting it only since the spring of 2023. And already I've gotten, this is my 50th video. So for my 50th video, I'm doing a top 10 review. Now, why do I do these? You guys know I am an ex-military veteran. I am combat arms. I am armored and armored reconnaissance. That was my career. And yeah, I spent the last part of my career filling positions as my career dwindled down and being an instructor and doing some more behind the scenes operations pictures. So when I was picking my top 10, I said, well, you've got to do this from the tactical perspective way, which was to make sure these things were hitting a criteria that I was focusing on when I was reviewing all these figures. So in order for these guys to have made my top 10, they had to serve that tactical function, which meant they had to look like they were ready for work for the roles that they've been identified to fill. I'll give you an example of a guy that I don't think fit that role that was very popular this year, and that's Tunnel Rat. While Tunnel Rat, the figure himself, is ready to fit that role, the kit that where he goes into these deep crevasses, tunnels, and hard to traverse little places that he's good with confined spaces, but all of his kit is big and bulky and doesn't get to follow him in except for a flashlight and a revolver. So it was kind of like, well, why did we feature that with Tunnel Rat when he should be traveling light? So that was an example why he didn't make that list. So when I do this list, guys, I got some pictures from the internet to kind of bring you back to the original, because that's another piece of the criteria is what did they do versus the original. Did they improve on the original and therefore trash the original concept of the character, or did they pay the proper amount of homage to the original and modernized it just the right balance? That also weighed into a lot of what I was doing. And was there good storytelling with the character or any potential with this character? Those were the criteria I was looking at. Now you got to bear in mind, guys, growing up as a military guy, I grew up and everything always came back to Joe in my career. And some of the funny things that I learned, Joe lied to me about by not showing me in the toy market, because I didn't get to see it very much in cartoons, and I don't think in any of the cartoons I've seen as the adult I've seen any scenes that depict real military life. The Joe cartoon seems to be constantly pushing the frontline battles and the ambushes and the sneak attacks and the convoy escorts and all these little small tasks and small party tasks and all this other stuff. But to show actual garrison life for a soldier, you know, you don't have the Joes talk about their pay issues. You don't have Joes talk about their housing issues. You don't see Joes in the canteen wearing their coveralls because it's a rainy maintenance day and there's not much going on. You know, I would love to see the Joes have swept the hangar floor as often as I did in my career. Now, I have done the stuff that you see in the cartoons in that, like in a realistic perspective, like we learn how to do section attacks, advance contacts, react to chance close contacts. I've participated in ambushes and things like that. And I've brought all those skills overseas and done them in conventional warfare. And when I see things in the G.I. Joe Classified that tie in the modern conventional warfare or the modern equipment that we use on the battlefield, it impresses me because I know that is their goal. That they've said that as much. The design team at Hasbro Hasbro Pulse, I've gone ahead and said that that's exactly what they're looking to achieve with this line, is to mirror the original line and then bring that modern aspect. And I know there's a couple of other reviewers that, you know, they don't really care that much about it. In fact, they kind of downplay the importance of having it being modern. But you got to remember, you're trying to appeal to a new toy market as well. It's not just for us who are revisiting these Joes. There's a bunch of kids out there right now. Viper Island, Dex, he's one of them, where they're learning Joes for the first time, and they've got to be able to recognize things that excite them. And so, you know, maybe that's why a modern Lady J doesn't come with a camcorder anymore, because that's obsolete old technology that this generation wouldn't identify with. So you got to consider all that. Anyways, that's enough about that. Going into my top 10, I'm going to do my 3 honorable mentions, okay? So 3 guys that would have made the list, 2 of them just if I had had them, okay? So the one that I don't have and I really want for my list, where did he go? Right here. The Crimson Viper, okay, and what's he? He's number 34. No, pardon me, number 11. No, number 34. I think he's number 34. Yeah, 34. I didn't get him. He was always a favorite of mine when I was a kid. I had the original 1980s version of him, and I loved this guy. And I didn't find out about the Joe Classified in time to get him when he was available. And now I find him impossible to find. And I'm forlorn about that. I'm hoping one day I'll just spot him miraculously on a shelf at a reasonable price and be able to snatch him up. But yeah, that one, and then, you know, that's how he comes out, right? Those of you who have them, you're so lucky, thank you. But yeah, and then of course when the next one comes out, the number 91 or whatever it is in the series, the Crimson Viper, I'll try and load up on that and feel satisfied about that. But there you go. So the next one is Beachhead, clearly number 11 or whatever he is in the series. Number 10, pardon me. I wasn't in time to get Beachhead, and now I can't find Beachhead at a reasonable price either. But he's another one that if he was available to me, he would have made my list because I really like that figure completely. So that's all I'm going to say on those 2. The rest of this is going to be done with a freehand video as we talk about the last honorable mention, and then I go in and explain my top 10 finally. I'm going to be doing this on a work in progress tabletop scene, my winter diorama that I'm still working on, and I'm using my hovercrafts as backdrops for this. They're not done either. I'm kind of chip away at things until I'm satisfied, and I'm still chipping away at things right now kind of guy. So let's go talk about the last honorable mention, which is Gung Ho. Okay, Retro Card Gung Ho is my last honorable mention. He, to me, is a superior G.I. Joe Classified figure. But the fact that he comes out in the retro card line and not as part of the regular G.I. Joe numbered box series is what precluded him from making my top 10 list. So there you go. Moving from number 10, moving down from the honorable mentions to the first in our list, which is number 10. We're going to talk about Flint. There we are. So Dashiell Fairborn, he makes the list, number 10. You can't ask for a more solid representation of Flint, and I'm going to call up the old photos of Flint here on the old tablet to remind you of what you were getting back in the day. So remember, there's the file card, Flint back in the day, and it would tell you he's an infantry specialist, right? And warrant officer for the Joes, right? I figure by now he's got to be at least a retired chief, but sure. There you go. So, and there you had your cartoon representations of him back in the day. So he was number 10 on the list. I really liked how he had the body armor. He had more than enough ammo for the weapon he was provided. His sidearm made sense. His entire uniform made sense. And I thought the facial sculpt was superior with that scar and the beret and that haircut that's under the beret. And I'll do this quickly. All of this combined to show me that he was a superior figure in almost every way of the design. And you've got to remember, when I was just learning about what was available in this line, he was coming off of regular shelves. I wasn't able to find him on a regular shelf. I had to order him through a big box. But the only other comparable to Flint, as far as command, infantry, with beret, besides Stalker, was Falcone. And that was just overall a terrible looking figure by the consensus. And I agreed. So Flint, number 10. Quick little shout out before I go to number 9 to Demakism, who is the guy who helped me really kind of get on board with doing the top 10. And I really appreciate it. Guys, I don't always comment on videos that I watch either, and I don't see the point sometimes, but it does really help the guys behind the camera to really kind of identify what their viewers want to see and things like that. So Demakism, I really appreciated your comment, and yeah, so thank you for doing that. And this is my 50th video, so I'll just chalk it up to Demakism. It's for you, bud. All right, so going down to number 9 on my list, we have rock and roll. Okay, so why did I take rock and roll? Craig McDonald, our surfer here. Okay, he was one of the earlier ones that I picked up in the line. And right away, what I really liked about it was how they had updated him. The original rock and roll here on the file card you got was a very simple rock and roll. He was in a green jumpsuit with a red collar. He had the helmet, and he had the, well, sorry, not the red collar. On the file card, he's got the red collar, but in the figure, he had the green collar. But yeah, there you go. That was the original rock and roll before the swivel arm battle grip right there. Okay, so big yellow beard, cross belts, not much else going on, right? And then the M60. Okay, that was pretty much all he came with, and that's all he looked like. And like the file card said, he was a Malibu kind of surfer guy, right? So they've really updated that to really reflect the Malibu surfer guy. And with those tattoos, those work for tattoos, but they also work for the modern close protection team, infantry detail kind of artwork that guys get, right? And with that beard, the way they sculpted the beard, the hair was perfect for him. It really didn't change anything from the original designs. They've kept the original concept and the cross belted ammunition and all that other stuff, but to replace the helmet with a bump helmet and to give him the thinsulate kind of sweatshirt, as opposed to the plain green jumpsuit that he was wearing, they really modernized him well, and that's why he made the number 9 on the list. And I did really love the hang 10 on his helmet and the NVG mount. I thought the overall what Hasbro did making these bump helmets was brilliant, because you can have the standard mold and just design off of it and do a lot of great things with it. So That was my number 9, Craig McConnell. There he is in the cartoon, in the comic book rendering. So who's our number 8? Well, we're going up to Breaker and the Ram. So there's Breaker, if you remember. And why Breaker and the Ram? Okay, because I made a big deal about Breaker and the Ram before. When I first got him, right? And I said, like, I had a lot of love for the Breaker. I thought he looked good. You know, you just had to give him more kit. So why is he making my top 10 if he doesn't have that extra kit? Well, okay, it's my top 10 because I gave him the extra kit. I gave him Falcon's radio because it made sense. And I gave him a weapon that I pulled off a McFarlane figurine. And I gave him a sidearm at the back. But overall, he very much looks very army. He's got the proper chest plating and mag pouches and all of that to be an effective dispatch rider, which is essentially what his role would be when they re-released and paired with the Ram. The other thing is they really did a great homage to this in that the Breaker headset really worked well with the helmet. And did remind me very much of the original Breaker and how simple he was. But if you remember the old 80s cartoon, when this series first came out and they were in the original 6 phase, when the Ram was the new thing, the very first commercial featured the Ram being ridden by Breaker in the commercial. The kid put Breaker on the Ram and had to get out of there. Right? So that's what everybody identified as the pairing. And a lot of people go back and they think, oh yeah, Breaker came with the Ram. No, it's also because Breaker was depicted on the Ram box, right? But he was actually a separate purchase. The Ram didn't originally come with a figure. So I thought that was a brilliant little nod to the past that Hasbro did when they created that particular figure set. And I really respected that one. So that was what, number 8 on our line? Is that what I'd said? Oh, yeah, number 8. So number 7, we're going to go down to Desert Commando Snake Eyes. And you'll notice I added a helmet to him. I added Grunt's helmet there because I wanted to make my point on what really was for him. Is he an homage to the original Snake Eyes? No, not really. He's a repaint of a re-envisioning of the original Snake Eyes with rebranded mask from probably the retro Snake Eyes. But overall, they did it in a more modern desert combat appeal and created almost a new character out of the Snake Eyes design. And if you look at him as an army builder, the potential is really there. When you do things like adding bump helmets and even berets. Like if I were to go over and find a beret, I could put the beret on there as well, right? But that helmet actually belongs to Grunt, so we'll leave it there. But the kit was reasonable. You got the sword, but the sword wasn't molded into the backpack. So if you didn't want to have a ninja desert operative for whatever reason, you didn't have to have it. Like there was a lot of potential and a lot of reasonable kit included in this figure at a regular price point. And for a repaint, it was bold and it was kind of in your face of the repaint critics to say, look, if you're going to repaint it, don't just throw all the old kit on there. They said, no, screw you. We'll throw all the old kit on there. We'll do something about the old kit. We'll repaint some of it and we'll add a couple of different pieces, but we can make a repaint work. And I think they successfully did that. So there you go. There's my number 7 on the list. That's Desert Commando Snake Eyes. He was number 92 in the series. Yeah, so Breaker and the Ram was 29. Desert Snake Eyes was 92. So we go up to number 6 in my pick here, guys. And this one we're going to shift over to Copra and say that it is Scrap Iron. Scrap Iron and his drone is number 6 for, I think, what is a superior deluxe set for a Joe series, like classified deluxe set. So you're looking, when this came out in Canada, I was looking at about $75, right? 75 to 65 in between there. So you were paying a heavy penny for this, but what you were getting in return was a really great set. You had Scrap Iron, who had a superior sculpt and a hideous face, like just very, very high detailed facial sculpt on him. And they made that simple old jumpsuit and vest work on him. And if I were to call him up, you guys remember, okay, this is what you get now, but this is what you got then when you got Scrap Iron, right? And he wasn't as impressive. He only came like with a little tripod mounted weapon thing. The rockets fit in oddly, and it relied on a command wire, right? He didn't really look that great to me back then, and I think I had him, but I don't think I ever did much with him. I didn't care about him. Here, he looks like a very dangerous individual with a very, very threatening piece of kit. And he looks like he is protected from that kit. What's not shown here is how that helmet fit over there, but it's very much like the old helmet, just more form-fitting. But I wanted to really just kind of show him with that really badass facial sculpt there. And then the drone controller, which is a modern piece of kit. It's a modernized way of controlling modern gear, right? And there you have a prime example of where Hasbro has re-envisioned and modernized a classic design, and it really worked out well. Okay, so that was number 6. That was Scrap Iron. So who's number 7? Well, no, sorry, number 5, pardon me. That would be Roadblock. Now, there's lots of different variations of Roadblock over the years, and we all remember them as the cartoon and the toy and the ones we had as a kid, whichever configuration you were lucky to get. I remember him from a comic, and I thought he looked pretty badass with the leopard print, but I didn't ever see that, you know, and maybe we'll see it with Tiger Force. But when he first came out, he was very similar to this right here, the Fortnite configuration. I wasn't a big fan of the first version, and that's not really the one that I wanted at all. So the one that they came out with reminded me a lot of the close protection teams I worked with or around in Afghanistan, like the guys that were in the camps with us and you'd talk to from time to time, and we'd work in ops around them, right? They were help training the Afghan nationals and doing other stuff like that, or working with the VIPs and other agencies. And you know, they had the beards and stuff like that. So the Roadblock I was a fan of was number 11, and I believe that's the Viper Island Roadblock. Not the Viper Island Roadblock, pardon me. Which Roadblock is this? Is he a special one? Yeah, Cobra Island Roadblock number 11. I was a big fan of the head sculpt they did with this, with the removable sunglasses, the bandana tied perfectly, and just having that separate earpiece. I wasn't a big fan of the earpiece at first, but it grew on me as they kept it very simple and fitting to the head sculpt. I added Snake Eyes' scarf on there because I felt like that was better, but I liked having the dry fit t-shirt with the modern dark and gray kind of white camo design. It was a different kind of go for there, and then he's got the lion tattoos and all that other stuff. Overall, this guy looks like an overseas operator from a modern conventional battlefield. A little bit of extra kit on the wrist, well, sure, you can let it go, but I thought this was a superior re-envisioning of a Roadblock, and it still felt like Roadblock, even though what they did do wrong with it is they gave him a big ass fictitious gun instead of a modern heavy weapon like with Rock and Roll, you know, or Tunnel Rat's gun would have been perfect. I could have put that on there, and maybe I will one day. But right now he's got Stalker's sidearm, and that's fine. But I thought Roadblock was a superior classified figure in that, yeah, they really didn't pay homage to the original, but they did modernize an original in a way that it felt valuable in a collection, even standing beside the first attempt, the Fortnite looking one. I feel like this was a better Roadblock, and he definitely made the grade as far as getting up on my top 10. So number 4 in my list, I'm just gonna call him up over here. Let's go back to the tablet and see what I had. Oh, look at it. It's Grunt. He's pretty new. He's been out for a couple of months here in Canada now. I know the guys in other countries have seen him for a while, and there you have him. And I didn't put the helmet back on him, and that's okay. But as far as an infantry figure goes, this was probably one of Hasbro's best outings, because he is just a generic infanteer, just like he was in the original line. And the thing about Hasbro, what they learned early, and guys, if you haven't watched the Netflix special, The Toys That Made Us, they do a really good little expose on the G.I. Joe brand back in the day. And one of the things they talked about was when they did the original figure line, they had to come up with an extra figure, and it ended up just being like Grunt's body with a couple of extra things slapped on, and then a featureless face mask. And that was Snake Eyes that they made that way, right? But they were right. Grunt was a very simple design, and you could use them as a template for a lot of things. So of course that leads us to troop building with the new G.I. Joe Classified. So they threw in an extra helmet, which I currently have sitting over here with Duke by his Tiger Cycle, but not on the top 10. But anyways, they threw in the extra helmet, they threw in the cartoon rifle and a modern M16 type rifle, and then they kept that simple green jumpsuit, wool fatigues kind of stuff underneath the chest plate. What they did really well with the backpack and the chest plate and everything is they made that whole chest rig removable. So you could troop build and have variants of Grunt with the steel core helmet or with the vest on or off, and you could make like 2 or 3 Grunts go a long way through your collection just through kit exchange. You already saw I had taken his helmet and put it on a Desert Commando Snake Eyes and had a completely different character there for a bit. So Grunt, as far as troop building potential, I felt was a really strong outing from Hasbro, as far as giving you an old style character that reminded you fully of that old style character, one of the originals, but giving him a modern appeal and some extra potential where maybe there wasn't some before. You know, it would have been easy to leave Grunt as an individual, but they gave you the potential to make him so much more. So Grunt was number 87 in the series, and he's number 4 on my list. Okay, number 5 on my list, or sorry, number 4. I gotta keep counting down, not up. Number 3 on the list is my boy Firefly. I can't say enough about Firefly and the sculpt and just what I think of this figure. And yeah, you see, I added my own little drone to him that I had kicking around, but he came loaded out beautifully for a regular over-the-shelf market character. You got everything you wanted with him. Unfortunately for some people, and it seemed to be a lot, what you also got with him was a bit of quality control and some loose hinges. If that's the thing that bothered you about it, then everybody understands, and I fully get that. Mine had very minor loose hinge in the hip swivel, not the hip swivel, the waist, like the torso swivel joint, but it was negligible. And honestly, it was a fine trade-off to finally get my hands on a proper Firefly. I had missed the boat on the old Firefly from the Viper Island early in the series, and I hadn't been a big fan of where that body armor was taking that character that they had made on that first draft. I didn't mind the little 2-legged Star Wars looking drone, but I was very relieved to hear that they were redoing the Firefly, and what they did with it was superior in every way, in my mind. You did get that extra little VBIED drone remote control car thing there, and then the backpack, which clearly doubles as a bomb in its own right on top of storage, and a couple of anti-purse mines or command detonated mines, and a detonator, as well as a proper submachine gun with silencer and a sidearm. And then the NVGs with those reflective metal paints or whatnot. Overall, that is a superior outing for a Firefly figure. So that's why he made it onto the list at number 3. Okay, so let's go back down to the tablet and get caught up. We've talked about Grunt, who is number 4. Oh, Grunt, so simple. So now to number 2 is Stalker, guys. Always going to be one of my favorites. I mentioned it, and he was one of the first videos I did, him and Rock and Roll. And Stalker will always be one of my favorites because he was the recce guy. He was a Ranger, U.S. Ranger. But my mind associated him a lot to what I was learning when I was starting my career in the armored reconnaissance and recce and patrolling and sneaking around in the bush. That was Stalker, man. And also, he was one of the first Joes, among one of the first Joes I ever got. And I thought he was so cool. Look at that camouflage and the simple weapon and the beret and everything just worked for him as an action figure. When you're 8 years old and this guy's in your hand, your backyard is like Vietnam and you are playing with him all day. Okay. The accuracy of his uniform was one of the things that compelled me, because you got to think he was coming out, and Larry Hama, when they were coming up with these guys, it was post-Vietnam, so a lot of the uniforms were a shout back to what these guys had seen back in the 70s and 80s, right? So Stalker up here, we'll get him back to the forefront. I knew I was going to have to move over here at some point. I just wanted him out of the way. Stalker, I thought, was a fantastic shout out to an original design without doing hardly anything to modernize it. They added more kit, but it wasn't like a super modern kit. I think the biggest thing they added that was modern was the radio and the silencer. And even that's not that modern, right? It's forgivably tech. Sorry, no silencer. It was yeah, just the radio. I don't think he had a silencer. I'm thinking of Snake Eyes. So he had that radio, and I think that was the only modern tech that they added. They added a scarf, which isn't modern. They added a back sling for his other weapon, which isn't modern. They did give him a submachine gun, pardon me, and I think that was a tactical and more modernized decision. But overall, the character design, he uses an old web gear belt as opposed to a chest rig, and he's got the old camouflage. The facial sculpt is exactly the same. He is an African-American male with a mustache, but he's got that more haggard, veteran experience look to his face. I think they really captured this guy really well. And I fell in love with this figure right off the hop. It's actually one of the figures, it's probably the figure that made me commit to the classified line and getting into it. He was one of the first ones I bought for sure. So Stalker was definitely number 2 on the list for good reason. There was that personal identification when I was a kid. There was the fact that he does look ready to go out and do his job. I do think he looks like he's out to go sneak around in the bush, not necessarily engage the enemy, but definitely bring back all the information on the enemy. And that is definitely what I picture Stalker being the best at. And so he made it to number 2 on the list. So that brings us down to our number 1. And number 1 kind of surprised me a little bit more than I think it should have. But maybe it might surprise you guys a little bit. But I think I was clear when I first did the video on this character why they were a underestimated powerhouse in the battlefield. So I am talking about... Where did they go? Oh my goodness. They fell down. I'll get them set back up. But I'm talking about CoverGirl. Yeah, guys. CoverGirl is my number 1 G.I. Joe classified pick as far as who is the best classified. It is Courtney Krieger, CoverGirl. And I'll tell you why, guys. Because... there's a few reasons. Let's start with what she came out with in the 80s. She's fun. That's there's no comment for this. We're going to go back to the tablet for a minute. Back in the 80s, this is what Courtney looked like, okay? And she drove around in her Wolverine that she had with her, which was a fictitious little tank with a multiple rocket launching system, and we haven't seen it come out yet. But we can talk about the potential of that somewhere down the line in a different video. This is how she looked when she came out. And you got to think about 80s fashion models back in the day. We were coming into the days of like, oh God, what was her name? Was it Shelley Long? The Diane from Cheers, and all these other haircuts where it was like this flared, blonde, form-fitted hairstyle of the 80s. And that's really what the fashion industry was pushing back then. So that's what your character looked like. And it kind of looked very plain and nothing very feminine about this character. Even trying to give it a low-cut line, the head looked greatly oversized, and nothing really looked overly feminine about that. So, of course, when they relaunched another version of it, they tried to make her look almost too feminine, and very much like the fashion model that her background describes in the card. But now it's just like, well, she almost looks like she's a Cold War spy version of herself, and it didn't really work for her. So there's the other variants of her, right? So the thing about Courtney is that she's a maintainer. She would be normally wearing a uniform like everybody else, working on maintenance stuff, right? But what I liked about it is that's what you see maintainers wearing a lot of the time is their uniforms, but they also wear coveralls and things like that, right? So doing maintenance back in the day, you had a set of coveralls and you had beat up gear that you knew was going to get oil and hydraulic fluid and coolant and all other stuff on it, because you were going to be changing out parts and pulling lines and pulling packs and doing all that stuff, crawling around in holes. You're going to get dirty. And so I found Courtney's, it's all, I can accept that uniform. It almost looks like it's a part kind of jumpsuit assembly, but yeah, I get that it's pants and a top. But she looks like she's relaxed for working on a vehicle and not necessarily for combat. I felt like that tablet was just probably the best piece of kit they could have offered on that line that was new and modern. And it was definitely a great way of dealing with the where the F is the Wolverine situation. It's basically telling you, look, she has access to it through her tablet. She can identify the systems. And what does that make her? That makes her an artillery asset, and that she can call for fire from her parked Wolverine. She just has to punch in a grid and that thing will launch it just using her tablet, because that is the modern warfare appeal of the idea, right? So I thought that was great. Giving her a simple shotgun, sure, you know, that's something she can quickly throw on a weapons rack in the driver's side of a vehicle, and quick access to, quickly fire off a couple of rounds and then get back to working on changing that wheel or you know, putting some fluid in or whatever she's doing to maintenance that vehicle. And she's got a side pistol, which is great, and then she's got her wrench. And everybody's making a big deal about Clutch coming with a wrench, but Courtney did it first, right? So the sculpt, that's a matter of opinion, right? So they did try to make her look more feminine this time, and I think that they did that, you know, by enhancing the bust line, of course, but also by trying to give a more feminine appeal to the face. They almost, I feel like they tried to make her look a little bit too Angelina Jolie, Megan Fox kind of look, but, you know, again, it's subjective to opinion, but they did achieve a more feminine design for a female figure that they really kind of hadn't been hitting well at the beginning. So that is my number one right there. It is CoverGirl. Surprise, surprise. Anyways, guys, that is the top 10 of the G.I. Joe Classified as I have them right now. And like I said, guys, I don't have all of the ones that I wish I did have right now. Definitely want to get my Alley Vipers, and I want to get my Beachhead, and I realize I'm going to be paying pretty pennies for those, but it is what it is. This list will probably change by this time next year as more stuff comes out on the market. And yeah, till then, thanks for watching. If you like the video, you go ahead and hit like. I won't tell anybody. And if you really like it, subscribe, because I really appreciate having you guys subscribers. I'm trying to collect a few. And in the comments, like I said, this video was made because of a comment that was saying, hey, if you're trying to do new content, why don't you try and do this? And it was stuff I was thinking about doing, but I really wasn't confident in doing it at the time when I had ruled it out. After Demarcus brought it up, I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do that. So I am going to start doing more videos about just other things to do with Joe's, not just their toy reviews. But that's it for this one. I've been the Crusty Old Crow, Ryan. This has been the Tactical Perspective, my top 10 G.I. Joe classified figures for 2023. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.